All right. Good morning, everyone. Morning. Oh, wow, lively crowd. Um, my name is Matthew Spoke. I'm joined today by Dustin Byington of OneChain and Min Kim of the Icon Project. I'm with Aon. We're really excited to be here today. We're going to be telling you a little bit about each of our projects, some of the problems that we're trying to address, and a new collaboration that we're working on together. So if you've been following any one of our projects, you kind of know that we have a common focus on connecting blockchains through a common fabric. So how do we bring interoperability into a world of very isolated systems? So I'll give you a quick little background on kind of the three of us collectively as teams. If I can get this to work. Okay, awesome. So quick background on the three projects that you're seeing in front of you. So OneChain, Icon, and Aon. I mean, we're all three focused on this layer of interoperability within the infrastructure of blockchain protocols. So we'll tell you a little bit about why we think that's an important piece of infrastructure that's still missing. Quick background on the three of us as collective teams. We've raised about 100 million US dollars, and our teams span everywhere from China to the US to Canada to South Korea, Singapore, and not showing on here, Switzerland and Barbados, where we also have teams in place. So we're very globally focused, all kind of targeting a very similar set of problems. But I'm going to pass it off to Kim to tell us a little bit, or to Min, sorry, tell us a little bit about some of the problems we're trying to address. Before I do that, I just wanted to give you kind of a quick snapshot of what's the state of the blockchain ecosystem today and why is interoperability becoming increasingly important. So if you look at the vast number of protocols that are being developed, and here's some of the big names that you may be familiar with, but obviously there's a long tail of many, many more protocols, all of which are kind of targeting and developing really interesting key features, some of which are focused on really niche areas like IoT or large payment systems or smart contracting systems. But the one thing that's kind of obvious here is that all of these systems have been built in complete isolation from one another. So this is kind of the state of the ecosystem as we see it today and what led the three of us to really start thinking about interoperability. So with that, I'll pass it off to Min.
Thank you. So, I'm sure you guys could all read, so I'll leave that up there. But just a background about how we kind of started this is that once, we started thinking about interoperability sort of independently, but once we started kind of meeting in conferences, so we met OneChain in Shanghai, Matt and I, we go like a year or two back, and we start, just communicating, talking about enterprise blockchain back in the days. And kind of the key theme is that we came across this interoperability, and a lot of people come up to us and say, "Oh, are you guys competitors to Aon? Are you guys competitors to OneChain?" But we're in essence, we're not really competitors at this point. We're trying to grow the ecosystem. We're trying to learn from each other. So a lot of these partnerships right now, it makes sense that we work on interoperability because we're tackling the same problems. So, some of the issues that we're trying to tackle, here's the need for the interoperability. Next. And just like interoperability between the projects right now, we each independently have our own projects in different regions across the globe. So we are focused in South Korea, Matt is focused in Toronto and Canada in the US, and we have OneChain in China. So while we're tackling these problems, we're also working together to solve this interoperability problem.
Okay, so we're going to take a minute and just kind of walk you through individually the three projects, what we're each working on as kind of a summary. So I'll start myself with the Aon project. I mean, Min gave a brief introduction. We're a team based in Toronto. The company behind Aon is called Nuco. This is maybe a few days outdated. We're about 27 people today as a team. Been growing pretty rapidly since we've gone through our ICO. We started down our path of kind of developing enterprise blockchains, focusing on the lack of scale in these systems for mainstream enterprise projects. And then that kind of naturally led us to realizing that as we built all these isolated private blockchains, there was one, going to be a need for these private blockchains to talk to each other, and two, increasingly there was growing interest among large enterprises to connect their private systems into the public domain. So start connecting into the public blockchains. So that's kind of our path that led us to the realization that interoperability was a massively important kind of missing piece of infrastructure. So we launched the Aon project we announced back in kind of July, and we've been working on developing our roadmap, and a lot of our team is kind of working towards our first release, which is coming up in January. But we'll give you a little bit more on timelines for each of the projects coming up.
So for Icon, So, like I mentioned, we're focused in South Korea. In South Korea, we are the largest blockchain network. We're currently leading 5 independent consortiums. So we have 5 project managers that are leading 1 securities, banks, universities, hospitals, and also insurance. These are independent consortiums with multiple members. The products that we have right now, we are actually priding ourselves that we're one of the very few projects that is backed by the Korean government. Second, we are the first to launch a commercial blockchain in South Korea in the securities blockchain consortium. And while we're kind of working on this projects, the problems with interoperability just came naturally. It's not that we are forcing this kind of like interoperability problem. This problem kind of rose up by these projects that we were leading. And I'm sure these guys have the same problem while working on their problem. So we're not here to market our ICOs today. We've already finished that. We've already fundraised enough so that we could work on our projects. We actually have real projects that we're working on solving real problems today. And again, sorry to go back to the kind of background, the Icon project is actually backed by 2 companies in South Korea. One is called The Loop, and the other is called Daily Intelligence.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Min. We're here today to talk a little bit about the digital economy. And right now, the digital economy is at about $300 billion, but it's really just starting to realize its potential. And one of the biggest limiting factors that we see at WANchain is the fact that all of these digital assets are isolated. And for you to be able to connect these various assets, you have to move off of the very trusted and secure blockchains and moving into low trust environments, moving into off-chain environments like centralized exchanges. And so both WANchain and the Blockchain Interoperability Alliance are here to solve and to work on these fundamental problems. And we think that we're much more better equipped to solve them working together. And so WANchain solves this problem by WANchain is a protocol. It's a fork of Ethereum, and it also implements Monero-style ring signatures. And we think that financial privacy is a fundamental tenet of financial infrastructure that we're building. Our unique contribution to the space is something called secure multi-party compute. And that's our way of being able to pull assets in from other chains. Effectively, what happens is you take a private key on a Bitcoin or a Litecoin blockchain, and you give that private key to a group of validators. And these group of validators work together and have a financial incentive to lock that coin on its respective chain, and then mint a new proxy token on WANchain in a one-to-one fashion. And so you can think of WANchain like it's a single protocol, single ledger that pulls multiple ledgers into it. And now once we have multiple assets into it. And then once we have multiple assets on our ledger and we have all the power of Ethereum and its Turing completeness, you can do things like code up decentralized exchanges using simple smart contracts. And so that will allow the exchange of assets to continue on-chain in a high-trusted environment. One of the reasons we're here today also is because we see some pretty significant custody problems and off-chain problems with asset managers, with crypto hedge funds. There's many of you here in the audience. And so we think that we're starting to build some products and think about some solutions there as well. A little bit about WANchain is, so we've got our headquarters in Beijing, Austin, and Singapore, and we're founded by Jack Liu, the technical co-founder of Factom. And some further thoughts about networks and working together. One of the really interesting things is that we're really living in the age of networks. And one of the biggest functions of network strength and network price is connectivity. And so for us, we think that it's much better to be connected to the other highly connected chains like Aeon and Icon. Some areas of focus that we'll be working on over the coming years are establishing common standards. This is, one effort, especially early on, is to make sure we don't go too far down rabbit holes and then realize, hey, now we can't talk to each other, we can't communicate. And so opening up this dialogue early, collaborating on go-to-market strategies, building engineering knowledge sharing across projects, and fostering global development communities. Here's a bit of our roadmap. So we're here announcing the new alliance here at Consensus Invest. Soon we'll be launching testnets for WANchain and Icon. And then next up in Q1 is when we'll really start thinking the IONS testnet will be going, and we'll really start kicking off our working groups.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone. That's all we wanted to share with you.
Yeah. Is there a question over here? Monero style. Monero is it's a way. It's you give it like a tumbling mechanism, and so it's a way for you to not necessarily be able to map where the to and from addresses come, and so we pair those with smart contracts to create a lot of privacy within our chain. How does MPC play into that? MPC that's the mechanism that our validators use for the locking of the private keys on the various chains, and then minting the proxy tokens on WANchain. And it's, yeah, we'll have to talk about that a little bit. We're interested in what you're doing with that as well.
Yep.
For the alliance, are you guys working groups with internally with your three companies, or are you going to expose that to more?
I think the goal was to find kind of a core group of companies that had enough shared vision in terms of where we saw interoperability going. We'd absolutely love to be opening this up to other projects that are focusing on interoperability, either at the protocol level or at the application level, that are focusing on decentralized exchanges or other cross-chain protocols that are being developed. The goal would be that this becomes kind of an industry association focused on making sure that we're all moving in the same direction, because we're not, none of us will be well suited or well served if we end up with completely different incompatible standards for how do you move messages and assets across chains. So that's just starting off, but hoping that there's more to join.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question because, initially we all know each other, so I think it was very natural for us to kind of start this discussion and start this alliance just between three of us. But yes, we are very open to other companies and other projects joining the alliance.
On that topic, have you had any discussions with IEEE?
Nothing yet. I mean, just to give you some context, where we're at in the process, we each have, pretty ambitious individual roadmaps and milestones that are coming up as projects. So we kind of, we're putting a stake in the ground saying that this is a very big part of our intention moving forward. And starting in Q1, we'll start focusing on technical priorities. The working groups between our projects will start kind of synchronizing on standards. Right now, we figured getting our first milestones out the door individually means that we'll then have common code bases that we can look at and start working towards standardization on. But no, we haven't gone that far yet.
Is governance part of this? Do you need to understand how, if you're going to upgrade protocols across chains, then have you thought about mechanisms for governance?
I think that would fall into making sure that our chains can consistently communicate with one another. Clearly, if we're going to release a massive upgrade to our protocol, and that's going to break our ability to communicate with one of the other chains, that's surely something we'd want to have a discussion about and see if we could all upgrade our chains at the same time. So I guess in the grander scheme of things, it will definitely impact some of our long-term governance, but I don't think this is necessarily an effort for us to have any kind of united governance.
Yeah, those are the exact kind of questions that we have on our own, and those are the exact same problems that we're trying to solve through this alliance.
Two questions. Is there a name for this alliance? Is the first question. The second question is, have you guys reached out to Polkadot or Cosmos? Would you like them to join the alliance as well, or what are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, working title right now is the Blockchain Interoperability Alliance. And I think, as we said earlier, no specific conversations have happened, but the goal would be at this point to just open it up to anybody who kind of shares a common vision for, where the layer of infrastructure focusing on interoperability needs to go. So, projects like Cosmos and Polkadot obviously share some of those common visions. So, assuming that they'd be interested, we'd obviously be open to having them join us. Yeah.
So you have to connect to all these different chains. There's going to be different types, portions of the protocol for each one of them. What's the focus for the first portions of interconnectivity? So is it Ethereum and Bitcoin, or you just listed all of those at once, right? So they're going to make a big push to, what's the basis that you're going to start off from, and then we go from there?
Well, we all have our own various strategies for connecting with various chains. I see sort of a trend where lots of the cross-chain folks are choosing to anchor into Ethereum first. But for this alliance, I think it's more about anchoring into each other than other chains.
Sorry, I came in a little bit late. In terms of atomic swaps, is that what we're kind of discussing? If we could trade cross-channel between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and will that be offered kind of as well?
I think, from our perspective, and you'll notice that, between the 3 projects, you'll find very different applicabilities and use cases of where we see our protocols developing. We're focusing significantly more generically at just interchain communication, meaning the recognition of state change across chains, whether that's for the movement of a coin or just some update to a data field in a smart contract. To us, interchain communication is generic enough that it can recognize both of those types of events. But of course, I mean, the movement of tokens across chains, as in WANchain's kind of model, is absolutely probably one of the most imminent and high-value use cases of interchain communication.
So we use the secure multi-party compute in lieu of the atomic swaps for some of its features that we think it has. But it's a challenge. No one's ever quite done this before, and so and used it in this case. Friend Conop here from Enigma has played around with MPC, and it can be a very useful tool, but it also has its limitations. And so, but we think we can unlock some really big utility with it.
And what was the name of that?
It's called Secure Multi-Party Compute.
All right, more questions than
Thanks,
we were
everybody.
expecting. Thank you.
Thank you.